I sent my son $550 each week so he could live comfortably. But on my birthday, he never came. When I called, he snapped, "We don't consider you family." 40 minutes later, my son went crazy. Can you believe your own son could look you in the eye, or rather, yell at you over the phone, and tell you, after years of financial support, that you're not even family? That's exactly what happened to me on my 65th birthday, and in that moment, something inside me just snapped. I decided their subscription to my wallet had officially expired. For 3 long years, I poured my savings into my son David's life and his wife Sarah's. Every single week, $550 left my account and landed in theirs. It was David's phrase, just so they could live comfortably. Sarah apparently needed to stay home with her 2 kids, and their mortgage was stretching them thin. I was a widow, quietly living on my late husband's pension, not needing much. So I gave. It became an unwritten family law. Every Friday that money moved. My 65th birthday. All I wanted was a simple dinner with my son, his wife, and my grandkids. I spent all afternoon making David's favorite pot roast, roasting root vegetables, even baking a small vanilla cake from scratch. The good plates were out. The food was hot by 6:30 p.m. By 7:30, it was drying out in the warming drawer. By 8 o'clock, my heart was sinking. When I finally picked up the phone and called David, he answered on the 3rd ring. I could hear Sarah laughing about something, a television blaring in the background. "David," I began quietly, "are you on your way? The food is getting cold." He sighed loudly, that heavy, exhausted breath you save for telemarketers. "Look, Mom, we're not coming. Sarah made other plans for us tonight. You know how busy we are. My birthday. We agreed on this a month ago." And then the words that cut deeper than any knife. "Honestly, Sarah says we don't count you as family anyway. You're just always nagging us about something." And then he hung up. I stood there in my kitchen, phone in hand, staring at the black screen. No tears, no scream, just a strange, absolute silence settling over me. For 3 years, I'd been buying my place in their lives. Tonight, the subscription expired. I carefully packed that beautiful pot roast into glass containers, placed them in the fridge. Then I walked over to my laptop. In the dim light of my dining room, I logged into my bank account. That recurring weekly transfer of $550, scheduled for tomorrow morning, canceled. Just like that, the financial foredrip was disconnected. But I wasn't done. Oh no. I opened another tab and logged into my cellular provider. David and Sarah's lines, which I'd added to my unlimited plan years ago because he complained about their bills, suspended. Then, Netflix, Hulu, HBO, every single streaming account I paid for. I changed all the passwords and logged them out of every device. I closed the laptop, made myself a cup of chamomile tea, and sat on the couch. Barely 40 minutes later, my home phone, which I rarely used, exploded. David's name flashing over and over. When I didn't answer, the answering machine clicked on. "Mom, pick up!" he screamed through the small speaker. My phone just lost service, and Sarah just got an alert from the bank that the Friday transfer failed. "What are you doing? Fix this now." No apology, no concern for me. Just sheer, unadulterated fury that his well had dried up. I picked up the remote, muted the volume on the machine, and took a slow sip of my chamomile tea. For the first time in years, I wasn't anxious about facing them. I went to bed early and slept soundly. The doorbell rang at 8:15 a.m. I was already dressed, standing at my kitchen island with my morning coffee. I unlocked the front door and pulled it open. David and Sarah stood on my porch. Sarah wore a brand-new designer trench coat I recognized from a magazine, clutching a leather purse that easily cost more than my weekly transfer. David looked frantic. "Mom, what is going on with the bank?" David demanded, pushing past me into the hallway. "And our phones? Did you get hacked?" "No," I replied, smooth as silk, closing the door. "I canceled them." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You did what? Why?" "Because," I walked back to my coffee, "I am no longer funding your lifestyle. I'm restructuring my finances for my retirement. You can't just cut us off without warning." Sarah yelled, her hands on her hips. "We have kids. We depend on that money. This is incredibly selfish of you, Monica." I looked her up and down, taking in the coat, the manicured nails, the expensive boots. "You'll figure it out. You're adults. David was pacing now, pulling his keys out of his pocket. And there it was, the heavy brass key to my house, a spare, hanging on his keyring. I stepped forward, reached out, and calmly slid it off. He froze, completely caught off guard. "What are you doing?" he stammered. "I'm taking back my property," I answered, dropping it into my apron pocket. "Since you don't count me as family, you certainly don't need free access to my home. Now, both of you need to leave. I have a gardening club meeting at 10. Sarah exploded, her face flushed with anger. "If you do this, you're never seeing your grandkids again." My voice was flat. "That is your choice," I stated, pointing to the door. "Goodbye." That weekend, total silence. Glorious. I spent Saturday morning in my backyard pruning the rose bushes. Helen, my neighbor, leaned over the fence. "You look different, Monica. Lighter somehow." I smiled, trimming a thorny branch. I dropped about 300 pounds of dead weight. By Tuesday, David's email came through, clearly from his office computer. It was brief and dripping with guilt. "Timmy and Lily keep asking why Grandma hates them. They want to come over. Also, the transmission on Sarah's car is slipping. We desperately need $300 to fix it so she can take the kids to school. Please, Mom." I read it twice. A year ago, the mention of my grandchildren would have had me reaching for my checkbook immediately. But I knew better now. Sarah always used the kids as a shield, deploying them whenever she needed something. My reply: one sentence. "I'm sorry to hear about the car. The city bus schedule is available online." 10 minutes later, my phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. It was Sarah, using a prepaid phone. "You are a monster. Don't expect us to beg." Blocked. I set my phone on the counter and went back out to the garden. I missed Timmy and Lily terribly, but I knew that if I caved now, the cycle would never end. I had to starve the manipulation, but Sarah wasn't giving up. On Thursday morning, a silver SUV pulled into my driveway. I watched her through the living room window, marching up with 5-year-old Timmy and 3-year-old Lily by their hands. She didn't ring the bell. She just opened the screen door, pushed the kids inside my porch, and yelled, "I have appointments today. Watch them." Before I could even unlock the main door, she was sprinting back to her car. She sped off, leaving my grandchildren standing on the welcome mat with their backpacks. I opened the door and brought them inside. We actually had a wonderful morning. I made pancakes, we built a fort in the living room, and I read them stories. But my mind was spinning. She thought she could still force me into being her obedient, free babysitter. She thought the old rules still applied. At 4 p.m., the SUV pulled back into the driveway. Sarah strolled up to the door, a fresh blowout in her hair and a shopping bag over her shoulder. Her appointments had clearly been a spa day. I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me so the kids wouldn't hear. I handed her a folded piece of paper. "What is this?" she frowned, unfolding it. "An invoice," I answered. 7 hours of emergency childcare at $25 an hour, plus $15 for lunch and snacks. Total is $190. Payable immediately. Sarah burst out laughing. "You're joking. You're billing me for watching your own grandchildren. You dropped them off without asking. My time is not free anymore. If you do not pay this by tomorrow, the next time you leave them on my porch and drive away, I will call Child Protective Services for abandonment." Her smile vanished. She stared at me, realizing I was absolutely serious. She grabbed the kids, shoved them toward the car, and drove away without another word. That evening, David called from a new number. He was furious about the invoice, but underneath the anger, I heard something else. Panic. "Mom, we are 2 months behind on rent," he shouted over the phone. "Sarah is stressed out of her mind. Are you trying to make us homeless?" "David," I replied evenly, "I gave you over $2,000 a month for 3 years. If you're behind on rent, it's not because of my lack of support. It's because of your spending." He muttered an excuse about the cost of groceries and hung up. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I had to know where all my money had gone. I drove across town to their neighborhood. It was a nice suburb, far above what David's middle management salary could afford alone. As I turned onto their street, I slowed my car to a crawl. And then I saw it, sitting proudly in their wide driveway, a brand-new fiberglass speedboat hooked up to a heavy-duty trailer. It still had the dealership stickers on the windshield. I parked down the street and just stared at it. That boat. That was my weekly $550. That boat was the money I hadn't spent on a vacation for myself in 10 years. They weren't struggling to buy groceries or pay the rent. They were redirecting their bills so they could play rich. A cold, hard clarity washed over me. Any lingering guilt I felt about cutting them off? Gone. Vanished. I didn't need to confront them about the boat. Knowing was enough. It reinforced every boundary I'd set. I put the car in drive and headed home. A few days later, I needed to fix a loose hinge on my back gate. I went into my garage to look for my late husband Arthur's heavy-duty drill. Arthur had been a master carpenter, and before he passed, he gifted David his massive rolling tool chest, thousands of dollars worth of professional equipment. I only kept a small emergency kit, but I knew David had the exact drill I needed. I drove to David's house, knowing Sarah was at a local yoga class. David opened the door, looking haggard. He didn't invite me in. "I need to borrow your dad's yellow power drill," I told him. David rubbed the back of his neck, looking everywhere but at my face. I don't have it, Mom." "Did you lend it to a neighbor?" "No," he swallowed hard. I sold the tool chest about a month ago." I just stared at him. "You sold your father's tools? The ones he spent 30 years collecting? The ones he explicitly wanted you to have? We needed the cash, okay?" David defended himself, raising his voice. Sarah wanted to join the local country club for the kids' networking, and the initiation fee was huge. "It's just metal and plastic, Mom. Don't make a big deal out of it." I didn't yell. I didn't slap him. I just nodded, slowly, taking in the full measure of the man my son had become. He would trade his father's legacy for a country club membership. "I understand," I said quietly. Then I turned around, walked to my car, and drove away. By the time I reached my driveway, a new decision was made. 4 years, I'd held on to our small family cabin up by the lake, always intending to pass it down to David. Sarah treated it like her personal summer home. Not anymore. The next morning, I packed an overnight bag, filled my trunk with heavy-duty garbage bags, and drove 3 hours north to the lake cabin. The property was entirely in my name, paid off years ago by Arthur and me. David and Sarah usually took it over for the entire month of June. When I unlocked the front door, the place was a disaster. Sarah had left it exactly as it was at the end of last summer. Dust coated the floors. The pantry was full of stale, half-eaten cereal boxes. But more importantly, the closets were packed with their things. Sarah's expensive summer dresses, David's fishing gear, inflatable water toys, cases of wine they had shipped up here. I opened the garbage bags and got to work. I didn't damage anything, but I didn't fold it either. I stuffed Sarah's clothes, David's tackle boxes, and every single item that belonged to them into those heavy black bags. I dragged 14 bags out onto the covered back porch. Next, I opened my phone and called a local locksmith. By 2:10 p.m., he had replaced the deadbolts on the front door, the back door, and the shed. I tested the shiny new brass keys, putting them safely on my ring. Before leaving, I called a local real estate agent I had known for years. Within an hour, she came over, took some photos, and we signed a short-term rental agreement. A lovely retired couple from Ohio wanted to rent the place for the entire summer. The cash, easily covering the property taxes for the next 5 years. I locked that new deadbolt, got in my car, and drove home with a smile on my face. Memorial Day weekend arrived 2 weeks later. This was the traditional kickoff to Sarah's lake season. I was sitting on my patio with Helen, sharing a pitcher of lemonade, when my phone started vibrating furiously on the glass table. It was David. I let it ring. He called back immediately. I finally picked it up. "Mom," he shouted, the background noise full of overlapping voices. "What is wrong with the lock on the cabin? My key won't turn. And why are all our things in garbage bags on the porch?" I poured myself another glass of lemonade. "Because you don't live there, David," I answered smoothly. "Sarah invited 10 of her friends up here for a barbecue," he panicked. "They're all sitting in their cars waiting to get in. Did you change the locks? You have to tell me where the spare key is hidden right now." "There is no spare key for you," I stated. "The cabin is my property. Since you sold your father's tools for a country club membership, I decided to rent the cabin out to a lovely retired couple. They arrive tomorrow. I packed your belongings, so you wouldn't leave a mess for my tenants." I could hear Sarah screaming in the background. "She did what?" "If you break a window," I added, calm as ever, The neighbors will call the sheriff, and you will be arrested for breaking and entering. Load your trash bags into your cars and go home, David. And don't call me again until you learn how to speak to me with respect." I ended the call and turned off my phone. Helen raised her glass to me, and we clinked them together in the afternoon sun. That was satisfaction. It has been 6 months since Memorial Day. The fallout was exactly as predictable, but it didn't touch me. Without my weekly $550, David and Sarah were forced to sell the boat at a massive loss just to cover their back rent. Sarah had to cancel her country club membership and actually get a part-time job to help pay their bills. The illusion of their wealthy lifestyle shattered, and they had to face the reality of living within their actual means. David tried to come over in September to apologize. He stood on my porch, looking humbled, holding a cheap bouquet of supermarket flowers. I accepted the flowers, but I didn't invite him inside. He asked if things could go back to normal. I told him they already had. My normal was peaceful. I set strict boundaries. I told him I would never give them another dime. I told him that if they wanted me in their lives, it would be as a mother and a grandmother, not an ATM. Now I see Timmy and Lily twice a month. I drive to a local park, buy them ice cream, and play with them for 2 hours. Sarah sits on a bench far away, glaring at her phone, but she doesn't dare say a word to me. She knows I hold the keys to my own life now, and she has zero power over me. I don't harbor any deep rage anymore. I just observe them from a safe distance. That cabin rental income? It's funding a 2-week cruise for Helen and me next spring. My house is quiet, my bank account is full, and I sleep deeply every single night. They told me I didn't count as family. They were right. I'm not their family anymore. I am just a woman who finally woke up and closed her wallet. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't cutting off the money. It was letting go of the illusion that if I just gave a little more, they would finally respect me. I learned that you can't buy genuine love, and you shouldn't have to pay a subscription fee to be treated like family. Setting boundaries doesn't make you a bad mother or a selfish person. It just means you know your worth. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply step back, close your wallet, and let people face the reality of their own choices. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate, and I just decided I was done tolerating disrespect. If my story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to make a quiet but tough choice to protect your own peace, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to say enough is enough to someone you love? Tell me what you think. I really want to know. And if you enjoy this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories about finding strength, setting boundaries, and taking back control. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.